Michelle, you have argued that there are a lot of psychological motivations, sort of political intrigue that has led the sort of MAGA base to at one point think this story would, quote, help them or lead them somewhere they wanted to go. But they're so publicly invested in it that now they've been walked down a road they don't want to all go down. But unlike other loyal MAGA stories where people have dropped it, they're not dropping it this time. I'm curious what you think about where we are tonight with this story clearly following the president overseas.
Well, I think that you have to go back to QAnon from Donald Trump's first term and this conspiracy theory fantasy that evolved around Trump, the idea that Trump was, although he might seem like a kind of depraved and immoral character, he was secretly this warrior for light that was battling this unspeakably evil cabal of elite pedophiles. And I've always seen that as a way of sort of rationalizing support for Trump, who on his face kind of contravenes the values of anyone who's ever claimed to be a Christian conservative. But nevertheless, this mythology around him has become very, very strong, and it's intersected with the Epstein case, because here you do have an elite pedophile who has been protected kind of manifestly. We don't know in all the ways, but there's been all sorts of manifest injustices, and he has a lot of relationships with very powerful figures that can't be explained in normal terms. And so there are all these legitimate questions. And I think people who had built up this image of Trump that was never based in reality, but the idea that Joe Rogan said that he was going to drain the swamp, that he was going to come in here and all these things were going to come to light, people had kind of invested in him. The idea that he was going to be reelected and there was going to be some sort of great national catharsis in which the enemies of that world were kind of finally revealed as the villains they were and dragged out and finally punished. And, right when people thought that this great drama was going to culminate, Trump said, oh, never mind.
Right. Mark?
I mean, I think the larger point here maybe is, the Epstein case is a story. It has relatable individual. Donald Trump is in the middle of it, but it's also a part of a larger sort of theme of Donald Trump not actually delivering on what he says he's going to deliver on. I mean, this whole promises made, promises kept trope that has been a slogan of his really for both campaigns, all three campaigns, never really held water. I mean, to some degree, Epstein is a much more relatable vision of him not, turning around inflation on week one, not ending the Ukraine war on day one, or Middle East on day one, balancing the budget. I mean, everything he has said he is going to do, both presidencies, both terms, he has not done. This actually, I think, has worn out a lot of his supporters over time. And Epstein has become such a palpable and identifiable story. You have someone like Joe Rogan, who's not just someone speaking for a lot of listeners, but he's someone who is voicing pretty, emphatically and pretty clearly and concisely what the breach is and what the sort of lie here is, which is I think, very relatable to a lot of his supporters.
Right, and there's a way that Trump, more so than traditional politicians, has been able to dismiss and diffuse so many things by saying, "Oh, they're Trump haters. Everyone's out to get Trump," and it's a version of the OJ defense. It's like you're either this bad or everyone's out to frame you, and they all had secret sonar plans and communications, and wow, they really got you. Every time you pull on a thread, you say, "Well, no, that person must have been in on it too." Rogan is uniquely invulnerable to that. He doesn't come from Republican or MAGA politics. He's a huge public supporter of the president. He will have a lot of audience either way, regardless, for the future. I mean, he's demonstrated that. And so when he says they lied to us, it somehow hits different than other people who've credibly said they lied to us about issues you mentioned, Ukraine or prices. J.D. Vance has been on full defense. And I mentioned that Rogan, again, we're quoting him a lot tonight, but some of what he said is true. Rogan mentions in that same podcast that this is a bipartisan scandal for Trump. Rare, perhaps, that Americans are celebrating anything bipartisan, but there it is. And J.D. Vance has not just been playing defense on the right. He's been talking to journalists. He's been reaching out where he can. He went on the attack against the Wall Street Journal over this so-called body illicit birthday card that Trump reportedly sent to Epstein. Trump denies that and has been suing the Journal over it, we should note. Vice President Vance discussing this online. He was on Twitter, now X, saying it's all BS. Chris Hayes, we want to show, then used that sort of space, which can still be a space for conversation or dialogue, to press the vice president about it. And they had a back and forth. And I want to play some of Hayes' reporting or coverage of that exchange.
The contention is that the book is entirely fake, or Trump being a contributor is fake, or all that is real, but someone created a totally fake Trump letter and then stuck it in the real book. Now, to his credit, the VP, who sort of holds open office hours over there on X, decided to engage with my questions with a lengthy response. Quote, the contention, which is pretty clear if you just read what I said, is that it's bogus for the Wall Street Journal to publish a hit piece without showing us the letter. I have no idea if the book exists. Wall Street Journal won't show it to us. I have no idea if the letter exists. Wall Street Journal won't show it to us. I have to say, on at least one point, I agree with the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance. As I said, quote, in point of fact, the contention isn't about journalistic process, and the lawsuit certainly isn't. Trump called the letter fake and sued for defamation. Like you, I'd love to see the book produced, which I think is what you're calling for. We're in agreement.
Hayes doing what diplomats do sometimes, Michelle, finding the sliver of perhaps agreement. But what do you think of that piece of this? And both, I'm curious on the substance, what you think of what Vance and others allege about the Journal reporting, which seems to have hit a nerve and a big lawsuit because it alleges an ongoing, I want to speak very precisely, an ongoing socialization or fraternization between these individuals with references to personal or romantic liaisons, not going any further than that, but that's the sort of cartoonish version of their discourse, substance, and then politics, that J.D. Vance feels the need to address a lot of this to a lot of people right now.
Well, and that J.D. Vance, to me, the headline is J.D. Vance says, I have no idea if the letter exists. Because Donald Trump says the letter doesn't exist, or at least that he didn't write it. He's suing the Wall Street Journal over it. If even his own vice president isn't sure that Donald Trump can be trusted in this instance, what should the rest of us take from that? And also, does it mean that Donald Trump is suing a major American newspaper if, in fact, the letter does exist? He's suing a major American newspaper to shut down a potentially true story. That's also a big scandal. And so I think, in some ways, it shows the untenable position that J.D. Vance is being put in, trying to defend this, because Donald Trump keeps saying things that are just demonstrably untrue. I mean, not in this instance. I also haven't seen the letter. And so although the New York Times has reported that Donald Trump contributed to this book, the letter hasn't been public, but Donald Trump has said a number of things in this case, in this scandal, that are demonstrably false. J.D. Vance needs to defend him. At the same time, he needs to keep the MAGA base that is following every twist and turn of this story on side. And in doing so, he made what I think is an extraordinarily damning admission about his faith in the man that he's serving.